What's going on, guys? It's AG here. So today we're going to be taking a look at the teams that have a chance to make their first college football playoff appearance this year. My top 10 teams that have a shot at doing that. Now, to qualify for this list, you couldn't have made the college football playoff before. So 15 teams have made the CFP previously. Those 15 teams are on your screen now. We've got Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Georgia, Michigan, Notre Dame, Washington, Cincinnati, Florida State, LSU, Michigan State, Oregon, TCU, and Texas. So if you're one of those teams, you're not eligible for this list. Now, with the playoff expanding to 12 teams, this is going to be a little more obtainable than it previously was. Now, with this top 10, I've looked a little bit at schedule. I've looked at strength of teams. So even if, you're the greatest team out there that's not, one of the top 10 teams in the country, if you have a really tough schedule, chances are you're probably going to lose too many games to make the playoff. Now, with the expanded playoff, you're probably going to have a legitimate shot depending on who you lose to. If you lose 2 or 3 games, depending on, if, let's say those 2 are Georgia and Alabama, for example. If you lose to both of them, you're probably still making the playoff somehow. But let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? So we're starting off at number 10 here. What we're going to do is look at everybody's schedule. All right, starting at number 10, we've got Iowa. Okay, Iowa, I know their offense is inept. All right, I know a lot of people don't like Kirk Ferentz as a head coach because it's not fun to watch. But as just a football guy, I know it's not fun to watch. Their offense is terrible, but their defense is so good that it makes up for that lack of offense. And this year they've got Cade McNamara at quarterback, formerly of Michigan, started at Michigan before J.J. McCarthy. He's been injured a little bit, so there's some rumors as far as when he'll be back this year or if he'll be back at all. But regardless if he is or not, they have a really favorable schedule. In the Big Ten, they avoid Oregon, they avoid Michigan, they avoid Penn State. So those are probably, they even avoid Rutgers, another team I'm really high on. But those are probably, like I said, 3 of the better teams in the Big Ten, at least projected-wise. Now, you do have to play Ohio State, but other than Ohio State and what probably Iowa State is there, and maybe Wisconsin, is there a game they're losing on here? The answer is no. And I think they're going to beat everybody but Ohio State. If you lose one game and that loss is to Ohio State, as good as they're probably going to be this year, that might sneak you in the playoff when it's going to 12 teams. Now, it's not a give-me because, like I said, you've got Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, which could all have 1 or 2 losses in the Big Ten as well. And depending on how it goes down as far as the tiebreaker when they're not playing each other for the Big Ten title race, to get in the championship. Could be good or bad for you. But again, I think at most there's 3 losses here, and I think they're only losing one of those, and that being Ohio State. If you lose just to Ohio State, you're probably sneaking in. All right, next up at number 9, we have Tennessee. All right, Volunteers, kind of a down year last year. I won't say completely down, but disappointing, I guess is the right word I'm looking for. Now, Joe Milton was at quarterback. I wasn't too high on him. They've got Nico, I'm not even going to attempt his last name, Lamalevia or something like that, coming in at quarterback. Our really highly coveted guy. Looking at their schedule, I think they have about 3 potential losses on here. If you can only lose 2 of those, which I'll get to in a second, they're making the college football playoff. Okay, so starting off, week 2, September 7th, NC State. I think that game is going to be tough. I'm really high on NC State this year. I think they have a legitimate chance to win the ACC. So right now I have Tennessee losing that game. But if they were to win that game, if they beat NC State, looking at the rest of their schedule, Alabama and Georgia are your only potential losses there. And we don't really know what to expect from Alabama this year. Could be really good, could not be. As of right now, though, I think they lose to Alabama and Georgia. But if, again, like I said at the beginning of this video, if those are your 2 losses, Alabama and Georgia, you're still getting in the playoff. So a lot of it's going to come down to that NC State game. It's going to be big. Because, again, I don't think Tennessee is going to lose to anybody else. I think they're too talented to do so. I know a lot of people are going to say Oklahoma, but I don't think Oklahoma's going to be very good. I haven't been impressed with Brent Venables as the head coach. But Tennessee, again, if you beat NC State with a loss to Alabama and Georgia, you're getting in the playoff. All right, next up we've got number 8, Louisville. All right, Louisville, pretty good year last year. I kind of got into the ACC championship a little sneakily, almost backdoored their way into the college football playoff if all would have worked out there. Now, they don't have the easiest schedule. All right, having that Notre Dame non-conference game is really going to be tough. If they didn't have Notre Dame on here, they'd probably be even higher on this list because besides that, you've got Miami and Clemson is probably who you're looking at potential loss-wise. SMU might be kind of tough too, but everybody else they're beating. But Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. Those are the 3 games right there. I think Notre Dame's going to be really good. They're probably going to go undefeated and be a playoff team. But Louisville had something to say about that last year against Notre Dame, so we're going to see about that. Louisville is improved from last year, I think. I think they've improved their weapons, their skill guys on offense. Tyler Shuck at quarterback, I think, is an upgrade. So I think they're going to be formidable this year. And I think they have a shot to win the ACC. I think it's kind of up for grabs between a lot of teams we're going to talk about here in a second. But there's a reason they're on this list. And like I said, at most, Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame, those are the 3 important games. If you can only lose one of those, you're probably sneaking in. In particular, if it's Notre Dame and Notre Dame goes undefeated, that's only going to benefit you going down the road. All right, next up, let's take a look at Miami. All right, Miami, another team in the ACC that I'm talking about. All right, this is number 7 on my list. All right, they've got a pretty manageable schedule here. The one to focus on for me is that back-to-back week with Louisville and Florida State, depending on how they manage that. Other pitfalls to watch out for, South Florida, they're going to be kind of good this year. All right, they're pretty solid last year, but they should be improved. And then Virginia Tech brings a ton back. That's not going to be easy by any means. But Miami has loaded up in the transfer portal. Cam Ward coming in, Damian Martinez. I think this is Mario Cristobal's most talented team, whether it's at Oregon, whether it's at Miami. I think they're going to be really good. Right now I have them in my preseason top 15. I think they're legit, and they should definitely be a force in the ACC and potentially make the college football playoff. All right, next up we have number 6. All right, NC State, another ACC team. That's going to be my last one on here, ACC-wise. NC State, we talked about them a little bit earlier. They've got only 2 games I think they could lose. All right, Tennessee and Clemson. Other than that, they're winning every one of these, and I think they beat Tennessee. NC State, always pretty good under Dave Doran, and this year I think is his most talented team. All right, they brought in some really good guys from the transfer portal. They brought in Grayson McCall at quarterback from Coastal Carolina. I think NC State's going to be really good, but I think they beat Tennessee. I think they lose at Clemson, but that one loss is enough to get you into the ACC championship, potentially against Clemson again. But talking about teams that are in the ACC that could be competitive, NC State, Clemson, Miami, Louisville, Florida State. There's a lot of teams in there that could really be feisty, but NC State avoids all those teams I just talked about besides Clemson. So really good schedule there. You kind of can manage that, I think. Clemson and Tennessee aren't back-to-back, so hopefully you can recover against Louisiana Tech and then go on an undefeated run here. I think it's definitely possible. All right, next up we've got number 5. All right, Utah. Utah moving over to the Big 12. All right, and really good in the Pac-12 with Cam Rising. And moving into the Big 12, it's wide open. All right, it's even more wide open to the ACC, I think. Texas and Oklahoma are gone. You've got an influx of new teams. All right, Utah, Arizona State, Colorado. But it's up for grabs, I think. And Utah is definitely one of my 2 favorites in the Big 12. We'll talk about the next one in a second. Looking at their schedule, though, like I said, nobody in the Big 12 is just super stellar right now. Legitimate candidates. You've got Utah, contender-wise, Oklahoma State, Arizona. We don't really know what to expect from them. Iowa State, Kansas State. They avoid a lot of those teams, though. They play Iowa State, they play Arizona, they play Oklahoma State. Now, at Oklahoma State, it's going to be tough. Oklahoma State made the Big 12 championship last year. But Utah, again, if they can really avoid these pitfalls, So if they can go on a run here, they're going to start 3-0, obviously. Southern Utah, Baylor, and Utah State are all going to be cakewalks for them. And then you go into Oklahoma State and Arizona, that back-to-back week is going to be tough. And then Iowa State and UCF, that back-to-back is going to be tough as well. Those are the 4 games I would focus on here for Utah. But Cam Rising is a winner. Kyle Whittingham's a winner. Cam Rising was out last year, but he's back. Back in the Big 12, actually. He transferred from Texas a long time ago. He's a winner. All right, and I think Utah could definitely get in the playoff. You could even somehow see a scenario where, let's say, Utah beats Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State beats them in the playoff in the Big 12 championship. They somehow both sneak in. Not out of the realm of possibility there. All right, moving into our top 4 here. Number 4, Oklahoma State. Just talked about them. All right, so they've actually got a tougher schedule, I think, than Utah because they have to play Kansas State and West Virginia, which I'm really high on, and then there's also Texas Tech. That 3-game stretch there, Utah, Kansas State, West Virginia, starting on September 21st. That's going to be a tough 3-game stretch. That's kind of going to define their year, I think. Last year, really up and down year for Oklahoma State, but ended up making the Big 12 championship regardless. They bring back almost all of their players from last year, in particular, Ollie Gordon at running back. He's going to be a force. Heisman candidate. Oklahoma State, I think, is going to be really good this year. Mike Gundy has a chance to finally get to the playoff. All right, so moving into our top three. These are really the only three I would say I think for sure getting in. Everybody else is kind of a toss-up because some of these, we've talked about so far are in the same conference. So, like, the winner is probably getting in. Now, the Big Ten and SEC probably going to put in multiple teams. But as far as the ACC and Big 12 is concerned, you're probably going to have to win it to get in it. But let's talk about our top three, which, like I said, I think are for sure getting in. Let's look at Missouri. Really favorable schedule here for them. Missouri, really good year last year under Eli Drinkwitz. Brady Cook is back at quarterback. They've got Luther Burden back at receiver. They're going to be really good offensively. They bring in running back Marcus Carroll from Georgia State to replace Cody Schrader. Top 10 running back last year at Georgia State. Now, imagine putting him in Missouri's offense where Cody Schrader kind of ran wild last year. I think they're going to be really good. Not only that, they avoid a lot of the tougher teams. All right, they only play Alabama out of probably the top 5 teams in the SEC. They avoid Ole Miss. They avoid Georgia. They avoid Texas. They avoid LSU. They avoid a lot of the potential pitfalls, even Tennessee. They don't play Tennessee either, that they're going to need. So the only potential loss on here I see is Alabama. There's not another one I see. So Missouri, go ahead and book it probably. I think they're in the playoff, no doubt. All right, top 2 here with Penn State. Okay, now these top 2 I think are probably the biggest beneficiaries of the expanded playoff, 2 teams. These are kind of the 2 teams that have been really close in the 4-team college football playoff era. Like Penn State, for example, has been behind Ohio State and Michigan, and that's it. They've beaten everybody else. Like think back to, I think it was 2 years ago. They were probably the 5th best team in the country. Or it might have been 2 years ago. It might have been 3. I can't remember. But probably the 5th best team in the country, and they get left out because Ohio State and Michigan are really good. But if they were in a different conference, they would have been in. I think they benefit a lot. Like I said, James Franklin done a pretty good job at Penn State. Just can't get over the Ohio State-Michigan hump. And I think they're going to benefit from playoff expansion. Looking at their schedule, all right, they avoid a lot of the tougher teams in the Big Ten. Yes, they play Ohio State, Wisconsin, and USC, but they avoid Oregon, avoid Michigan, avoid Iowa, avoid Rutgers. All right, so they're avoiding some of the tougher competition there. Now, that first game at West Virginia, I think that's actually going to be pretty tough because I think West Virginia is a threat in the Big 12. But I think Penn State is a little too strong up front for them. But I think this is Drew Aller's year finally for Penn State to have success. I think they're probably losing to Ohio State, and that's it. I think they're definitely in good shape to finally make the playoff. All right, next up here, last but not least, at number 1, we have Ole Miss. All right, Ole Miss is the other team I was talking about as far as the biggest beneficiary besides Penn State at making an expanded playoff, at a potential making a playoff run. So they have a really, really good schedule here. All right, again, not too many losses here. All right, you're probably looking at most 2 losses, that being LSU and Georgia. And I think they're better than LSU. So I think they win that game. Now you're going to Death Valley. That's not going to be easy by any means. But right now I've only got them losing 1 game, and that's to Georgia. But again, even with 2 losses, if LSU is really good, you might could still sneak in being from the SEC. Like look back at the last rankings. They're all, if you have 2 losses and you're in one of the power conferences, you're going to be probably top 10, let alone probably top 15, definitely. So they're definitely going to have a chance at sneaking in the playoff no matter what goes down. But those are my top 10 teams that I think could make their first college football playoff appearance this year. Who did I leave off the list? Who do you think should be on this list that could make their first college football playoff appearance? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video. And most importantly, subscribe.